as well as the reflection down in the water.
So Yoshi, I pushed the big live button on Facebook to give folks out there a little sample of what they're missing. And these cool cats painting with you right now are enjoying. So,
awesome.
Yeah, man. So yeah, we are live at Purple Easel online making paintings. And we got a group of folks here who are all in their homes because we're all social distance painters tonight. And Yoshi's taking us step by step to make a painting. Everyone's got their drinks, their foods, their snacks, and likely most of them are in their pajamas. And we're out here and taking them step by step. So this is exciting. So, we're coming along, right? Painting's coming along. I don't know, Yoshi, could they do anything different to make it their own? What would you suggest?
Yeah, there's always ways that you can customize your paintings however you'd like. Later, when we add the silhouettes at the bottom of all the grass and the cattails, you can even add silhouettes of maybe birds in the sky. You can add something in the water, maybe the reflection of like a fin or something, like a shark or dolphin. You could do like a dolphin kind of jumping over the sun. That might be pretty neat if you guys can accomplish that. But yeah, really anything to this would be super, super cool to see.
Yeah, you could even at this point you can even throw in a little sailboat in the distance before the cattails.
Yeah, definitely. You can maybe do like grass blades lower down if you don't want to block in the cattails, and then do like something either a fish of sorts or a boat.
A little dolphin jumping out of the water.
Yeah, dolphin. That'd be kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, super, super customizable.
So do you think these are East Coast cattails or West Coast cattails?
Ooh, I have no idea. Considering we're West Coast and the original artist of this is West Coast, I'm gonna say West Coast.
Maybe. Do you are there cattails on the West Coast? Do you think maybe like down in Newport and where it's marshy?
Yeah, probably like Newport.
It seems like a colder plant, but I don't know.
I have no idea where cattails grow.
Yeah, they're growing on that painting right now.
Yeah, that's where they grow.
That's where they grow.
On the painting.
On the painting. So if anyone out there has any interesting quarantine stories, we'd love for you to share those, and we could share them back here at one of our events. We'd love to hear about how painting is making a difference in your life while we're all shut in, waiting out this situation we're all in. And email those to us. We love to hear your story. We all each have our own unique story. Purple Easel, we've been around for 8 years, and we're fighting right now because we're a small business, and like so many other small businesses, this mandatory lockdown thing has really affected us. But we're making the most of it. We're out here. Artists are hungry, so we will do what we have to share our art and make a living. So I appreciate Yoshi painting with you all tonight. And we got Emily here too off camera. She's assisting. She's waving. Yeah, so it's exciting.
All right, so go ahead and continue on with the sun and the reflection if you're still doing that. I'm gonna go ahead and start showing you guys how to make the brush strokes down at the bottom for the blades of grass, as well as the stems for the cattail. So we'll be doing that next. I think I want to use my red tip brush for that. So I'll be using my red tip brush again, which is the bigger, flat, squared brush. If you feel like this one is too big of a brush to use, definitely use a smaller one. Maybe if you have the black tip brush, which is the same brush, essentially just smaller. So either one will work. If you feel like both of these are still too big, always feel free to use even one of your smaller brushes. So you guys do have options. The ones that purchase the supply kit, you do have options as far as like the smaller ones. If you at home don't have the supply kit, that's perfectly fine. Any smaller flat brush will work. I prefer like the bigger flat brushes just because they hold a little bit more paint. It's going to be easier to kind of start at the bottom and make long brush strokes to the top versus using a smaller brush. It just doesn't hold as much paint. You might get like halfway and then you'll have to dip back into some paint and continue on that line. And that just gives us a little room for error as far as like lining up the brush and stuff like that. So preferably, I prefer the slightly bigger, flat, squared brush, but whatever works for you, you can work on that, okay? Or work with that. So I'll be using plain black paint for this. So just plain black paint. At this point of the painting, your black paint might be a little dry now. So you can go ahead and add some water to it. I just dipped my brush inside my jar of water, a cup of water, and just added a little bit right onto my black paint. Again, just to smooth it out a little bit. If you use the black paint as is, it's kind of thick. So if when you're adding in your brush strokes, they might come out a little bit thicker than the originals. Again, that's just because you're using the thicker paint. So if you use the water to water it down slightly, you're going to be able to get much, much thinner brush strokes. That kind of brings me to this next part, which I'm going to show you guys a couple different tips on how to get really thin brush strokes so that we can accomplish something similar to the original. So for one, I have wet my brush like I already mentioned. I added the water to my paint. That's one thing to add. Again, the paint on its own might give you thicker brush strokes, while the slightly thinner paint is going to make it a little bit easier to make those really thin brush strokes. So if you are working with the red tip brush like I am, or the black tip brush, or any flat brush, there's two ways to use them. If you kind of use all of the bristles at once, notice how thick the brush is. It's going to really only be able to give you one width of a stroke. So you have this really thick stroke. If you so this is the side that I was using, the flat side. If you kind of twist it to the side and use the side of your brush, notice how much thinner that is. So if I paint with that thin side, I'm going to get a much, much thinner brush stroke. So hopefully you guys can see that there. So there's two different widths of your brush. Are going to give you two different options as far as the width of a line. So still, another tip is, even if you're using the thin side of your brush, if you press down really hard on your canvas or on your surface, you're just going to get a thicker brush stroke. So for example, I'm still using my thin side, but if I press down a lot, notice how much thicker my line is. So even though I'm using the thin side, if I press down a lot on my brush or on my canvas, it's going to give you a really thick brush stroke. So the trick to it is to just use light pressure on your canvas and just using the thin side. Okay, so that's how we're going to accomplish that. So I'll leave this up here just so you guys can remember that. Another kind of tip, and this is more of a actual physical doing it tip, is to use your pinky as a kind of anchor to put on your canvas. That's going to also help you make kind of longer lines so that your hand isn't just floating off on the canvas, and that way you don't really have a say in kind of like the movement of it. I've seen sometimes people like grab their hand with their other hand to try and get really thin lines. That could work for you, but I think an easier way is to, again, use your pinky, set that on your canvas, and then use that as an anchor to kind of guide you or help you guide you to make those really thin brush strokes. Anyways, enough with the tips. Let's go ahead and actually start applying paint on our canvas. You can start with these bigger lines if you prefer. If not, you can start at the bottom and then bring them upward. I think it's easier to kind of start at the top of the line. So for example, I can start there and bring it down to the bottom, and that gives me really thin brush stroke. But again, if you prefer to start at the bottom and kind of go up, that could also work for you. Either way works. These longer ones are going to be where we eventually add our cattails to, but on the original, there are kind of like these grass blades down at the bottom, which are essentially the same brush stroke. You're just going to add a lot more of them a lot closer together. So for example, I'm kind of just flicking my brush, starting them at the bottom, and then kind of flicking my brush upward, still using the thin side of my brush. And notice how close I am putting these brush strokes. I want them really, really close together so that we can fill up a lot of this area at the bottom with mostly just black, okay? So you can see that there. Again, I can show you guys a couple more. I'll start at the bottom again. and kind of am just flicking upward. Notice how they're not all the exact same length either. So I'm making some slightly shorter, some slightly bigger, same as before, is just to add variation. The more variation that you give it, the more realistic that these are gonna look, versus if they're all the same length or the same thickness, it might look a little too computerized, to not so natural, okay? So I wanna give it some variation on there, something like that. And you can start with either one. You can start with the stems of our cattails, which are the bigger lines, or you can start off with the grass. Either one works. You can do one and then the other, or work with maybe like half of your canvas first and then do the other half, however you want to accomplish this, as long as you get both of them on there. But yeah, that's really it. I'll let you guys work on that for a moment. The only other thing that I have to mention is, notice how on the original, the grass blades kind of are a lot taller here on the edges. As they kind of get towards the center, we kind of dip down. So right in here in the center, you'll notice that the grass blades kind of come in. Same thing from this side, they kind of come down to be a little bit shorter here at the center, but then taller on the sides. That's really the only other tip that I had for you guys. But yeah, go ahead and work on those. I'll be working on mine. If you guys have questions or want me to go over anything in particular, I can do so. Just go ahead and add it to the chat and we can see your comments on there.
Yoshi, Michelle asks, what color are you using for the grass?
So I'm just using plain black. So if you wanted to use a different color, you definitely can. You can maybe use like a darker green or something like that. But as far as what I'm doing, I am just using plain black for this. As far as how many cattails you're going to add, that's all up to you. So that is completely up to you. You can put as many as you'd like. You can put as many as fit on your canvas. Again, I have kind of already mentioned we all work slightly differently. So if you have more space on yours, by all means, go ahead and add more of them.
So Yoshi, since this whole quarantine happened and all of a sudden we were all home instantly, now that you're back at the easel painting, does it feel a little bit like normal?
Yeah, actually, it felt not normal being at home. So I think this is more normal than being at home. I think this is something that I kind of, even when we were at the studio, I would be there mostly every day. So yeah, coming back to it definitely feels normal.
And I know when we first got started, there was this weird feeling, like, because you've been teaching in front of people for so long, and now we're teaching in front of cameras, how very different this is. But even then, I think I get the feeling that you've fallen into the rhythm that you're accustomed to, and it does feel kind of natural.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it is very, very similar as far as like teaching goes, what we do at the studio. Again, with those minor differences, but as far as like teaching itself, it's very, very similar. I just can't make my dumb jokes as much just because I won't get
You don't get the feedback.
the instant feedback. But other than that, very, very much the same.
I'll laugh at your jokes, Yoshi. I'll laugh at your jokes. I wonder if anyone here who's painting with us tonight has not been to the studio.
Yeah, that would be interesting actually, because this is obviously different, but still very much the same. So I'm curious to know if anybody's starting off with this versus having visited us before.
Yeah, And so we have already received a lot of requests about private parties, virtual private parties.
Oh.
We're trying to work out the details on that. And then we had another person email us about shipping supplies long distance when other parts of the state or outside the state, so that their family members could all virtually paint together.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is stuff we've never done before. We've never shipped product anywhere, and we've never had a virtual present, a live painting experience, all brand new. Do you think we've made any mistakes so far?
I think they should answer that.
Well, Aubrey, she's like, where's my paint? Yeah, when we first got started, so we've been organizing the paint beforehand and getting that distributed at the studio, curbside, touch-free. And it's a bit to organize, and poor Aubrey was without her black and the green. I'm like, I had to scrounge up her phone number. I sent her a text. I said, Aubrey, where do you live? She goes, I'm over here. I'm like, I'll be right there. I'm like, what? It's like, Emily, you got this. Come push the buttons. So, but no, Aubrey, she sent me some photos, and she and the family are having a good time making their paintings, and because that would stink, setting off and getting your setup, and all of a sudden you're without your supplies. So that's one of my fears, is like dropping the ball. I want to make sure that we're organized and we're getting all the supplies out to everyone. But otherwise, once everyone has the materials, I think we got this down. We'd love to see your painting. So when this is over, please post on social media or shoot us an email with an attachment. We'd love to see how it comes out. That's one of the disappointing things, is we can't walk around and watch all the paintings come to life. And when the room would be full, 80 people, 80 beautiful paintings, all various in style and execution. So it's kind of a bummer to see all those come to life.
But if you guys wanted to, you guys could post your pictures, whether it's your painting or with your family, on social media. You can use Instagram and use the hashtag Purple Easel. That way we can also see those. So if you guys wanted to post your pictures online, you can do so there. And then again, use the hashtag Purple Easel so that we have access to those, or so that we can see those online.
So are these cattails going to be hard?
No, these are going to be super, super easy, which in fact brings me to my next step. So let's go ahead and start working on those cattails. If you are still working on the blades of grass, or maybe even the stems of the cattails, continue to do that. This next step is also going to be pretty straightforward. I'll kind of show you guys a couple of them, but then you'll repeat that process on and on until you get all of your cattails filled in, or at least all of the ones that you want to add to yours. So I'm still using the same brush. I don't have to clean it off or anything. We're